Okay. Why don't we start with item number 1? So, an amendment to change the name of Texas JSA that's sponsored by 2 senators, Senator Pham and Senator Mohanty. I don't know how you want to split up the opening speech, but maybe 2 minutes each or 3 minutes in one or something. I don't know. But just if you could just read the legislation and then talk about why you decided or why you think this is necessary for Texas JSA.
Yeah, listen, should we share a screen or share the doc first?
I think it's all on the same doc because it's on the next page.
Okay, I just done like for the recording's sake.
Oh, I think it's okay. Just yeah.
Okay, for certain. So Sumit and I agreed that Sumit would read the first half and then I'll read the second half.
Okay.
Yeah. So currently there's a constant call for inclusiveness in JSA. However, the name of Texas JSA continues to be used, even though the state possesses the neighboring states of Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Colorado. This is not only this has shown the dominance of one state over others, as one can tell by the location of all the JSA activities and events that we do. Not only this, but this issue also could lead to confusion in communication with those starting new JSA chapters, especially those who are not within the state of Texas. Therefore, a change in the name of the state becomes essential to have inclusiveness, equity, and proper communication. So the name of the state ought to be amended and the process ought to be held statewide, as inclusiveness is an important factor in the growth of Texas Junior State.
And then be it amended in the Senate and House of Representatives of the Texas JSA in Congress assembled that Section 1, Article 1 shall incorporate as Section 1 to read, subsection 1, there can be a statewide public election for potential name changes before statewide voting by all JSAers takes place to determine the name change. There can be the option to vote for this name change alongside these regional/state elections. And then in the event of a draw, the governor will have the final authority. And then section 2 says, Article 1 shall incorporate a section 2 to read as follows. Then subsection 1 says, after passage, all mentions of our state in publicity, incorporating but not limited to social media, documents released to the general public, conventions, and branding should be revised to the elected name change. And then section 3 says, in the event of a name change, the entire Texas JSA Constitution shall be amended to read as follows. Subsection 1, all mentions of our state name will be revised to the elected name change. And then lastly, section 4 says, this amendment will be going into effect immediately upon passage. And in terms of why we wrote this bill, so firstly, as director of expansion, I've seen how whenever we attempt to broaden our outreach to neighboring states such as Oklahoma, Louisiana, or Arkansas, that it's been really hard to have any contacts or schools understand that essentially Texas JSA is more than just Texas, but also incorporating of other states. And then we're also seeing the consistent nature of conventions still being held in Texas, and that can really be challenging for any chapter engagement and chapter startups because conventions are oftentimes really the most important driving factors that leads people to be committed to our organization in the first place. And without the incentive to have conventions out beyond Texas, it's been really hard for expansion efforts, on top of how inclusiveness is constantly a call in Texas JSA and JSA as a whole.
Okay. So I just made an executive decision that we're not going to be too strict on the timing. So just talk for as long as you want. And if you go over 4 minutes, I'll stop you for any speech.
Okay.
So I guess if anyone wants to ask a question about the bill, initially, anyone can. Okay, well, I have a question, even though I'm not a senator. So I'm wondering, like, how active the chapter, like, how many chapters we have outside of Texas, and how active they are.
Well, see, if you gaze at the CIA report of all the Texas JSA chapters, unfortunately, there are currently none, and it's been really hard to try to outreach to chapters beyond our state. Even trying to revive the one or the very few that were mentioned before to be in Louisiana, and unfortunately, that's where we stand.
Okay, so like a name change would be something like Pacific Northwest, like PNW, or like Midwest. So like something more broad.
For certain, and it doesn't have to be like a strict one for now, because as the bill mentioned, it would be a list of ideas that we collect, and then it would be a statewide vote that determines the ultimate name.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this bill?
I have one question. Okay, so it says that statewide voting would take place by JSA to determine the name change. What if JSA votes that they don't want the name change? Like, what if people just don't want to change Texas JSA? Would
Essentially,
this, so what if the government wants to change the name, but we, like the students in JSA, don't? How do you react to that?
yes, if needed, we can incorporate the option in the poll to abstain from a name change, and then that can be alongside the name suggestions. And then obviously popular vote determines it all. We go with what the majority says. But considering the arguments we have, we would love to put this forward as a rhetoric, as we wish to give like people a purpose for why we're even proposing the poll in the first place, if it is released, as to why a name change should be considered.
Anyone else that wants to speak on this topic?
Yeah, sure. I have a question. So I'm wondering why like we can't make this into a bill first and then amend it later, because like the alteration to section 1 of the, or article 1 of the Constitution is like basically saying that we're gonna have like a vote to change the name, right? But I guess like article 1 already like includes all of the different states that we already have in like Texas JSA as a whole. So like I'm wondering why we can't have the vote like be part of a bill, and then once that bill is passed, then we amend the entire Constitution to like the name change, because we're kind of just like putting in the idea that we're having a statewide election for this name in like a constitution, when we don't like necessarily have to put in the Constitution, since all we're doing is wanting to change the name, right?
Yes, but this change is going to be drastic. It's going to be very significant. It's going to impact like a lot of branding and a lot of publicity. And obviously the Constitution itself has plenty of times where it mentions the Texas JSA name. And the bill literally says that we can have a statewide election, and it really is encouraged with all this rhetoric. And that's why it literally is in the Constitution in terms of amendments.
Wait, can I ask a follow-up or no? Okay, so yeah, I understand that like it's like a drastic change and it's like a big change overall, but like that kind of like doesn't really answer my question. Like what is like mutually exclusive about doing a bill first that like promotes this vote and then gives people like the vote when we don't have to really like put this in the Constitution, and then we can just make like an amendment once that bill passes and we get the ideas back to actually amend the name change. Like I don't really understand why we have to put subsection 1 into Article 1 of the Constitution.
It's for constitutional support, and it essentially states that this is a very important issue, pretty much.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
I do see where Andy is coming from, though. Like, it's kind of, there's no point of putting in the Constitution that we're going to allow an election if the election is going to be a one and done deal done over that. You know, like, it doesn't make sense to change the entire Constitution just to say that we can have an election if we're going to have one that will change the name.
Samantha, do you want to question, or? Samantha?
Sorry, what was your question? What was your question?
If you wanted to answer this one, because I know I've been answering so many questions, sorry.
I'm not sure if I answered if I understand the question right, so I don't want to answer it wrong. So if you have something to say, go ahead.
Kenny, do you want to repeat the question to Samantha?
The question basically was, why are we going to have this become an amendment instead of a bill? Like, there's no point of putting in the Constitution as an entire subsection that we can have a vote to change the name if we're just going to vote to change the name. Like, it doesn't, it's kind of, it's just, it doesn't make sense to put in the Constitution that. Like, why is this a bill instead of an amendment? Or why is this an amendment instead of a bill?
Okay, I'm pretty sure we've already stated our answer in a sense about like how it's a very important change and it's very significant. And also, if needed, we can make this a resolution or bill. It's merely that we thought because of the impact it's going to have, it should be a constitution. So like it's clearly out there for any future years. Like it can clearly be known that the name change is a possibility that could still be done if needed in the future or wished for in the future.
Wait, then can I ask like why a bill doesn't like set a precedent? Like if we have a bill that sets a precedent for a name change, why can't that just be repeated again if we want a separate name change? Like why specifically does the name change clause have to be applied to Article 1? Because like the purpose of the bill is to like create an action that we're obviously trying to lead to an amendment. But I don't feel like a bill and an amendment have to be together as an amendment if the bill is doing an action that will lead to an amendment.
So do you want to answer this one, or?
No, you can go ahead if you have something to say.
I don't have much. I mean, honestly, it's the same reasons I would probably just say again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything new to say either, other than what he's been saying for the past couple of questions.
Okay, it seems like we're kind of having the same points here. So I guess we have some options. The first is obviously we're going to take a vote on this amendment, but we do need a 2/3 for the amendment to pass. And then we would have to change the Constitution to incorporate the text in this amendment. The other option, as Senator Pham said, like briefly, was he can change it into a bill or resolution, which I think we were talking a little bit about. And that bill, it probably can be changed pretty quickly. And if that passes, then it would go to the House of Reps. And we would convene basically an emergency session with the House of Representatives because, yeah, well, they would need to pass all the bills in order for the governor to sign them. So I guess if nobody else has anything to say, then we can just vote on the bill. I mean, the amendment. Is there anyone who doesn't want to vote on the amendment? All right. Okay, I'll just take a vote then. So all who wish to pass this amendment, just, I guess, raise your hand. Okay, that's 3. And then all who don't wish to pass. Okay, so 3 to 1. So that is a 3/4. So that's a 2/3 majority. So I guess I'll be incorporating the text of subsection 1 and subsection 1 of section 2 into the Constitution.
And Mitsuki, can I request last minute for any of my other bills to not be amendments anymore?
Why don't you just change the text in the bill that you wish to not be an amendment?
Okay, so
So-
just make a quick change, pretty much.
Yeah, I can give you editing access.
No worries. Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly just say this is like my other one, which is gonna affect cabinet, is no longer an amendment.
Okay, so why don't we skip that and do the regional constitutions bill first?
Okay, sure.
Do I need to change mine from bill to amendment on that? I sent you a text.
Okay, so you're gonna change yours too?
Do I need to?
I think it already is an amendment. Yeah, well, you said an amendment to establish regional constitutions, so yeah, you should be fine.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't we skip the cabinet webinars and come back to it? So an amendment to establish regional constitution. If you could, Senator Foster is sponsoring it. So if you could just read the text and then explain a little bit about why you decided to write this amendment.
So presently, Article 4 of the Texas JSA Constitution states, the law of the Texas Junior State supersedes regional law. This causes a gray area regarding the laws and constitutions of regions as well as the sovereignty of each region. By not allocating for regional constitutions to determine the aforementioned laws of the region, the Texas JSA laws automatically hold the only effect on the regions. Though Texas JSA law will supersede, regions need a basis on which they are able to form a cohesive and prosperous region. If passed, this legislation will provide security and uniformity across the Texas Junior State. Whereas there are 4 regions in the Texas Junior State of America, and where each one shall include 1 mayor and 2 senators, each region shall encompass the assigned area noted by the governor of the Texas JSA, and the regional officials are responsible for the governance of their respective regions. Be it amended by the Senate and House of Representatives of the Texas JSA and Congress assembled that Article 4, Section 9 shall be added to the Texas JSA Constitution. Article 4, Section 9 shall read, each region's official shall be responsible for the drafting of a regional constitution. This constitution shall be drafted by both senators of their respective regions alongside their mayor. After approval by the region's mayors, the constitution shall be submitted to the governor for final approval. The Constitution of the Texas JSA shall hold ultimate authority over the regions. Section 2 states that regional constitutions shall be drafted and voted upon by the incoming officers for each region 2023-2024 school year, and constitutions are to be completed and submitted to the governor of the Texas Junior State of America before fall state of 2023. After passage and approval by the governor, this regional social media account should include an accessible link for the members of their respective regions to view alongside with the Constitution for the Texas Junior State of America. And this bill should immediately go into effect upon passage. I wrote this bill because there's just a lot of gray areas over the wording in the Constitution and the power that regions do hold over chapters. There's no cohesive way to state that a region does have its own law and that a region can act as its own under the Texas Junior State of America.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this amendment? whether it be a statement or question.
Yeah, sure. I just had a question. So I'm just wondering, what happens if there are supposedly some empty slots for some of the requirements here? So let's say a region doesn't have a social media account because the region leaders are inactive, they're not committed to the position, or as I once asked before, look, with the RGR this year not having any leaders, what would happen if like they're just like empty slots for leadership positions or the social media account?
I think that if that does end up happening, cabinet could convene, and this would probably be the expansion department could convene and draft like a stand-in bill that would provide some sort of legislative power for the region itself. And then in the case of there not being a social media account, the Texas Junior State of America Instagram or Twitter, whatever we have, could post the regional constitutions for them, and they could post them alongside the standing regional accounts as well, just so that everyone can see it, since a lot of people don't follow those accounts.
And just to clarify, does the bill also specify that it also applies to any counties? I mean, we don't have any counties now, but in case in the future our region downgrades to a county again, where there's not even a mayor, there's just an admin who's appointed in cabinet. I'm just wondering if the bill does specify that it does apply to any future counties.
At the moment, I wrote this bill just for the regions of the Texas JSA, since we no longer have any counties. In the future, if there is an influx of counties, we could in the future, we could write a bill that would denote a sort of similar action, since there wouldn't be a mayor to hold ultimate authority over the senators. It would be hard for this legislation to hold effect over them. I think that we should just cross that bridge when we get to it, since there are currently no counties in JSA, and a county would have to have a separate bill because they wouldn't be held to the same regard, like with elected official as the head of their region or their county.
Okay, if no one else has any comment on this amendment, we can take a vote. Sumeta, if you're still there, you can just use the raise hand button. So let's see. All in favor of passing this amendment, just raise your hand. Oh, okay, that's everyone. So this one does pass with unanimous vote in favor of it. So congratulations to Senator Foster. I'll add that to the Constitution. Thank you. That means that everyone should start working on, or actually, you can start working on your regional constitution, or you can just push it to the next senators or mayors in your region, since you do have until the next fall state.
I think we talked about like the last Senate meeting briefly about us like generation senators to have them write this as the first legislative piece, but that can come later.
Yeah, okay. Philip, if you're done with your bill, do you want to go back to it?
Yeah, sure. And then I'll also have my resolution right after, and it should also be finished.
Okay, so let's do item number 2, which is a bill to require cabinet webinars and workshops sponsored by Senator Philip Pham. If you could read the bill.
As of writing, there's a constant release of cabinet applications without consistent town hall-like meetings being held to explain cabinet, especially to new or freshman JSAers, in spite of the new updates or expectations in each department or position. These workshops can be imperative to explicitly welcome questions from JSAers or to explicitly hand advice from those currently serving or with cabinet experience. JSAers may also not be informed of regional affiliations. The issues can even apply to those who are chapter officers with experience in the cabinet who are seeking to recruit their members to join cabinet but may need advice in essentially how they can approach the promotion opportunity. And then smaller chapters may also not have the opportunities of larger chapters in terms of peer reviews. With all these issues and contentions, it becomes necessary to require a cabinet webinar and workshop at least 3 weeks in advance of the cabinet application deadline. Whereas the understanding of information for cabinet applications is crucial in fostering state leadership of the Texas Junior States, and whereas a welcoming space for questions and open discussions is an important factor in the growth of the Texas Junior State, be it ratified by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Texas JSA and Congress assembled that public town halls and workshops are held to explain the cabinet structure explicitly with its new updates and positions, as well as opening the floor for all questions and concerns on various matters, incorporating but not limited to how to best approach the application, how to best promote the opportunity to fellow chapter members, etc. These workshops must be held by current regional or state leaders, current regional or state leaders and those with at least 1 year of experience in the field of leadership. And Section 2 states, the aforementioned workshops and town halls must be held at least 3 weeks in advance of when these applications are due. And then lastly, this bill will go into effect immediately upon passage. And in terms of like why I wrote this bill is essentially whenever I worked with many people, not just in my chapter, especially with like new JSAers or freshman JSAers, but also reaching out to friends who just joined JSA first year or who are trying to find ways to recruit their own chapter members in joining cabinet. It's often a very complex topic to explain, and a whole list of like descriptions in a Google Doc alone, I believe, is very overwhelming, and oftentimes it doesn't cover every single piece of information. Then oftentimes I've seen expectation for certain positions. I mean, the convention coordinator position was essentially, I've heard that the big three often search for non-seniors, and sometimes that's a misclarification. And then the regions of Texas JSA are often not common knowledge, especially among, like I said, the new JSAs and freshman ones who are trying to fill out the general application section, and the region question pops up and they may not be aware of it entirely. And then also just ensuring that we're providing an open space with the fact that we have like new updates to positions. And I know the convention department is a great example of that, is really crucial when we're trying to figure out the purpose of why we're having cabinet webinars, when technically there have been recordings in the past, but I know those are being outdated with the addition and the removal and the amendments of various positions and how cabinet is changing across time. So that's pretty much why I am writing this bill.
Okay, we can have discussion on this bill and the last bill. We just can't vote on them because we no longer have quorum or meet the minimum people that we need. So, yeah, does anyone have an opinion on this bill?
I do have one question about it though. So would this require would this bill make them mandatory for people to attend?
No, just for like it to be held sometime soon by like either the regional or state leader. So someone in the leadership group, however, of Texas JSA as a whole.
Okay, so for these like webinars, you want them like recorded on the YouTube channel or just live, like as live events?
I mean, the bill doesn't necessarily specify about recordings. It's
Mhm.
merely that it has to be held, but in the interest of the people, it's recommended to record it, and it's up to the responsibility of the leaders for how they're going to best promote it. I mean, everything has to be promoted in terms of like how it's publicly known. So I was going to suggest that if future leaders really wish for the webinar to be really be known, it is their responsibility to ensure that the information gets out there well enough in the publicity efforts.
Okay. If anyone else has something to say, otherwise we can just move on to the last bill, or the resolution. Yeah, so I'm thinking, we can just, let's see. We need to vote on these bills, so we can figure that out later. But we can just have a discussion on these with the three of us, the four of us, the three of you, and the one of me. And then we can talk about voting on them later. So, Senator Pham, if you could just read your resolution.
Just to clarify before I read, so for the
Yeah.
last one, we have to like vote on it at a different time, probably.
Yeah. We can just have like I took some notes on like what you said about the constitutions and stuff, so we can share that with the other senators, and we can find a time where we can vote on those two bills.
Okay, sounds good. And then worst case scenario, we can try to vote on it at WinterCon if we're not able to find a mutual time again.
That would be yes. Yes. Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right, so for this last one, it's the second cabinet convention resolution, and it states that firstly, that although JSAers who apply in the summer cycle of cabinet applications are offered a cabinet convention for them to be introduced in an informative social setting to the department, neighboring departments, and fellow cabinet members, the case has failed to be the same for those who apply mid-year. These mid-year applicants may more likely be freshman JSAers who have less experience and exposure to any insights and information on cabinet. In addition, department checkups are crucial to ensuring leadership accountability and making the cabinet seem more merely than a workshop, but also an open space for connections, especially in the time of what seems to be a dead period of JSA between Fall State and Winter Congress, where preparation for Winter Congress and Spring State becomes imminent. These values should be upheld through the means of a second cabinet convention. Mitsuki, before I go on, should I clarify like what a resolution is? Because like I actually didn't actually know what a resolution was until I asked like Kyle about like how I should best approach this idea.
Why don't you just yeah, why don't you do that after you read it, the whole thing?
Okay, something. Okay, so whereas the cabinet entry has been unfair for mid-year applicants in contrast to their summer applicant counterparts, and whereas a social bond and department checkup/networking are essential to the strength of the Texas JSA cabinet that runs the entire state, being amended by the Senate and House of Representatives of the Texas JSA in Congress assembled that Section 1, the establishment of a second cabinet convention can be carried out for similar purposes, such as introducing cabinet to new people or activities such as initiating department collaboration dialogue similar to those of the first cabinet convention in the school year. Subsection 1, if it is not possible to set the date of a second cabinet convention by the summer application cycle of the cabinet, the notice of the convention must be given at least 1 month in advance with the information accompanying the mid-year cabinet application document. All bills in conflict with this resolution are hereby null and void once passed. This resolution goes into effect immediately. And then for the resolution, it essentially is a call. So it's an encouragement and to give support to the idea that it's advocating for. So it's not necessarily like a requirement or any constitutional changes. It's just something that shows that we have Senate support for the idea and that it should be implemented. I've also seen this idea being supported by many people who run for Big Three positions in the past, as well as Kyle Lederer, one of our chief of staff people, and also our CIA director, Tez, who have also convened with in terms of like this idea of a second cabinet convention. because of the fact that we all believe that we need to have some fairness for both like the mid-year applicants and the summer applicants, and just a great hospitality for everyone and a social bond that we can really provoke in terms of emotions and how we feel about cabinet through a second CapCon, and then also on top of like the department checks-ups that can be facilitated through a second CapCon.
Does anyone have any input? Okay. If that's the case, then I think we're done here because we can't vote on anything. So, yeah, at what, 1:48 p.m., I adjourn this session.